Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Just letting everyone get together. Good morning to you, Chris, from wherever you're joining us from. North America is going to be my wild stab in the dark. Canada. Nice. Hi, Liz. Good afternoon to you. So I think we'll kick off, and then latecomers can catch up and or just join once we're into the session, as it were. Let me just start with a little bit of an apology if anyone had some troubles with the Teams links. Seems to have generated more than one, so apologies if you were a victim of that. Hopefully that's all resolved itself. And yeah, if anybody joins later, then we'll let them catch up. So we'll kick off. So welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andy Dedman. I'm responsible for customer success here at Marval. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's great to see so many of you here. Today's session is focused on CMDB in practice. So the concepts, common pitfalls, the practical Marval capabilities that can help make a CMDB useful, trusted and sustainable. From speaking with many of our customers, most organizations have had some form of CMDB conversation before. In some cases, the CMDB has become too noisy, too difficult to maintain, or not fully trusted by the teams who are meant to use it. So today we want to look at that honestly and practically. We're going to start with Babak, who will walk us through some of the key CMDB principles, the common symptoms that we see, data that people do not trust, uncertainty over what should and should not be included, and the assumption that we see often that discovery tooling alone will solve the problem. Babak will also look at the different lenses that often get mixed together. So financial, asset, inventory, and configuration, and why being clear on the primary purpose of your CMDB is so important. We'll then hand over to Chris, who'll bring that into the Marval context and show how MSM supports CMDB and asset management in practice, including CI structures, subtypes, attributes, location, discovery, configuration, etc., etc. The aim today is not to suggest that every customer needs a large or complex CMDB. In fact, I think one of the key messages we're going to deliver is the opposite. Start with the decisions that you need to support, the consumers who need the data, and the people who will steward it. We'll also leave time for questions towards the end, but please do also use the Q&A as we go. If something resonates with your own environment or your own experiences, or if you have a specific question, raise it and we'll pick it up as we go along during the session. So with that, let's get started and I'll hand over to Babak.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Andy mentioned in the part one, I will mostly talk about the basic concepts of CMDB, the pitfalls and the quite common issues that you might face during your CMDB work. So I'll keep the initial talking short and let's jump to the first slide. Sorry, I missed the agenda. So let's just start with the first symptom, and to be honest, one of the most common one. Imagine this situation in your organization, which might be the current one. You've got the CMDB, you have the data in it, but actually no one trusts the CMDB. And what do we mean when we are saying no one trusts the data? picture this, like, for example, you've got a change manager who want to approve a change, which requires some data from the CMDB, but instead of looking into the CMDB, they check their notes, the kind of historic events that they had from the past. Or with the similar situation when we are talking about the incident management team, instead of going to the CMDB and check the records there, they start asking questions in Teams chat, in WhatsApp groups, whatever they have, asking about the server configuration or the history of what might happen on that specific system. And last but not least, somehow the finance team, it's quite common that they've got their own Excel spreadsheets to keep the history of what the system, what the organization has, where they are located, who is the assigned user. So by mentioning these as an example, I believe you can agree that it's a kind of a definition of people do not trust the data in the CMDB. And in some cases, when organizations are facing this kind of situation, they are saying, okay, maybe if we can add more data or try to, for example, buy a new tool, do the integration, these kind of actions might solve the issue. But actually, it's not going to be a solution for that. To be clear, the thing is, let's put a name for this situation. The name that I'm using is a kind of purpose problem. I call this situation purpose problem. And what does that mean? It is trying to say, in many cases, you in your organization try to set up a database, a single database, which tries to answer a different question sets, which we can maybe say different lenses or different perspective. In the ITSM world, around the CMDB stuff in particular, we might have three separate lenses or perspective. I prefer to say perspective, which I already mentioned when I was trying to provide you with an example of the change manager or the finance team or the incident management team. As you can see on the screen, I've provided you with three boxes. Let me highlight them. As you can see, for example, here on the right, on the left, I put the financial, which means one of the key purposes of the CMDB could be the financial stuff, the kind of database that can answer questions like, for example, what does it cost? And to answer that, you need to provide data like, for example, the book value, the depreciation of that specific asset, the total cost of ownership, that group of questions and that group of data that you need to have in your CMDB. The second category can be asset and inventory management kind of view, which primarily try to answer what do we own? How many, for example, laptop do we have? How many servers? Where are they? Who is the assigned user? Who is using them? In which building? In which room? In which data center? And even the life cycle stage of them. Are they still in use? Have we retired them? And many other, many more questions that you can add in that question set. And the last, which is the most techy one, is the configuration perspective, which in the service world, it tried to answer where this specific CI is located, how it is going to impact the service, how it is connected to other devices while we are trying to provide services to customers. And as you can see, for example, these are the kind of examples that I mentioned here, like, for example, impact analysis, which is the one which normally change management team is going to use. if something goes wrong with this specific asset, what's going to happen to the service, to the other assets that they might that we might be using. While we are moving to the next slide, we are going to run a kind of poll, trying to see what do you think. As I mentioned, as I explained, we might have 3 separate perspectives, and either of these 3 can be a good choice to work on. And as I mentioned in my slide, there is no wrong answer, but I'm asking you to pick one of these 3, saying, for example, which one you think that your current CMDB is trying to answer, or if you want to start a new CMDB from scratch, which one you think is the good option for your organization based on what you know from your organization. Would you please submit your answer? And I will see if I can see the result. I'm not sure.
If you have your Teams chat open, Babak, you should be able to see it in there. So far, asset and inventory with 69% of the vote and configuration with 31.
Okay, so
and
it's a kind of
nobody voting
financial
financials yet. Yeah.
Okay, it's not a surprise actually, but we will discuss it in more detail. But as far as I can see, yes, I can finally see the results. Asset and inventory is the kind of top selected items, and then followed by configuration, and it's still no one selected the financials. So let's move on. Why I asked about these 3 perspectives and why it is important to somehow decide or choose. Because as I mentioned in the first slide, as that kind of purpose problem, purpose issue, is you cannot set up a database and out of nowhere expect it to answer wide range of questions. So it needed to be kind of considered in your design steps. When you start designing your CMDB, you need to decide which perspective is going to be the best option for your organization. Why? Because you see on the screen, when we are talking about the, let's say, same physical device like a laptop, and you want to store a data for that laptop in your CMDB, depends on which perspective you have selected before. You need to provide the different sets of information for that. As you can see, for example, here, we are saying, okay, we are talking about the laptop, but because we already selected the financial perspective, so we are expecting to have the cost center logged for that. We are expecting to have the purchase cost, when we purchased it, from whom we purchased it. Is there any contract with that laptop providing, for example, support or some sort of warranty? And when we are talking about the asset and inventory perspective, the kind of the data is going to be different. Something like, I don't know, serial number, make and model, assigned user, who is actually using that laptop, where is it located, is it in the, I don't know, the headquarters, is it on the in any other branches of the organization right now, what is the life cycle status, is it kind of still in use, or the kind of, I don't know, it's like a normal status for the assets, is it, I don't know, damaged, is it stolen, is it broken, or whatever status that you might prefer to define for that. And again, the last one, the configuration perspective, is going to talk about more technical things, like, for example, I don't know, how the actual technical setting of that laptop, for example, what is the CPU model of that, how much memory it has, and many more that you can define in the configuration world. I picked laptop because which is a quite common things and ready to use, and many CMDBs has the record for the laptops in organizations. But again, if we want to be more strict when we are talking about the laptops, in many cases is that it does not add any sort of value in the configuration perspective. It is okay, users are using laptops as the day-to-day usage, but no services actually relied on the laptops. It's more, I don't know, more serious assets like, I don't know, servers, network devices, or even some other software kind of things. But again, so I'm saying in your design phase, you need to pick which lens is going to be the best option for your organization. We are going to talk about it a bit later. Maybe is it okay to pick 2, 3, 4? I don't know, because I just listed 3 lenses, which are the most common one, but maybe you want to define another lens, and maybe based on your organization need, you might need to pick more than one, which is going to be quite acceptable. Following the earlier slide, the other thing is, okay, we already listed 10, 15, 20 attributes for HCI. If it's going to be a laptop, if it's going to be a server, it's a software, it's a subscription, whatever it is. The other thing that you need to clarify while designing your CMDB is not that everything needs to be stored directly in your Marval. That there is no such a rule saying, okay, you need to put everything in Marval and you need to keep updating them. I'm saying Marval because I'm expecting most of you are using Marval as your CMDB tool, and it's going to be the same if you are using any other tool for your CMDB. On this slide, I kind of put 3 different patterns and different ways of treating attributes of your CIs. I called them held, synced, and linked. But you can call them whatever else you are more comfortable with. Why I chose these 3 and what are they mean is held means when we are talking about a specific attribute, we are expecting it to be stored directly in the Marval. And at the end, we are going to count on Marval as the single source of truth. When we are talking about, for example, I don't know, the location of an asset, we are expecting to look in the Marval and check the location parameter of that specific CI, and we are going to be sure that the data is correct, kind of. In some other cases, we might go through the kind of integration, saying, okay, actually based on the nature of that attribute, it's not that kind of wise choice to put it in Marvel directly. It might be better to maintain that piece of information on another system. Maybe it's even beyond the IT scope, but we are reading from that data from another system. I don't know, that system can be a finance system, can be your ERP system, can be, I don't know, an HR system. But we are trying to keep Marvel synced with that, let's call it third-party system. But the thing is, just let me clarify this part. While I'm saying there is no need to store things directly in the Marvel, it does not mean that you cannot find the data in the Marvel. The data will be still in Marvel, but maintained somewhere else and through an integration kind of things synchronized into Marvel as well. You can see on this slide, for example, I selected the assigned user or something like the technical config, which are imported from a third-party system. I'm not expecting to go there and manually enter the, for example, CPU model or the memory of that specific device, but I can expect that those kind of technical stuff imported from another system, like, I don't know, Intune's SCCM or whatever tools that are capable of something like that. And the third pattern or third approach can be linked. Actually, in some cases, we prefer even not to import the data in the Marval, but create a link between the Marval record and a third-party system. Something like, for example, saying, okay, in your finance system, you might have a record of a warranty of a device. So you can create a kind of link between that CI and that warranty link, and just if a user want to look into the warranty status of that CI, can click on that link and it will be redirected to your finance system and check the details. But again, as an example, because I mentioned the warranty, in Marval, we've got the financial financial management process capabilities, and you can store the warranty information of the CI directly in the Marval. Again, it's your choice, but I'm mentioning them here because these kind of things are the ones that needed to be reviewed, needed to be decided about. You cannot just use them on the go, or just let's move forward and then we can decide about them later. These are the kind of things that you need to decide about on the first day of I don't know, starting your CMDB. And again, on the left, we've got the laptop as an example, and on the right, I've got the server. So the structure, the concepts are exactly the same, but the nature of the attributes are entirely different. So it is obvious that when we are talking about each CI classes, we might need different sets of attributes. So here you can see, for example, that the items that I listed for the production server are entirely different than the list that I provided in the laptop section. But again, either of them can be decided to be held in Marval, synced with another system, or just linked to a third-party system. Okay, the scope is another key decision that you need to make. I'm going to be quick about this one, considering the time. One of the challenges that many organizations are facing when talking about the CMDB is deciding what sort of CI type they should include in their CMDB. Again, this will be kind of impacted by the first question that you answered about the perspective. If you chose the financial perspective, the answer of deciding if you should include this one in your CMDB or not might be different from when you selected the asset and inventory, or when you selected the configuration. For example, as I mentioned earlier in another slide, the first row is talking about the laptop. And as you can see, for example, while we chose the financial perspective, then yeah, why not store that in the CMDB? While we are talking about the asset and inventory management, yes, again, why not? We need to keep track of how many laptops that we have, which are the users. But when we are talking about the configuration, when we are talking about the impact on the services, when we are talking about dependency of different CIs with each other, so actually laptop is not going to be that important to be included in the CMDB. So again, in this table, you can see, for example, a list of items that I listed here, different CI types, different CI classes. But the answer for all of them is not just yes, okay, put everything in your CMDB. It depends on what perspective that you are following. And this slide is again one of the most important one when you're deciding about what sort of things that you want to store in your CMDB. Your decision comes with a cost. It's not saying, okay, just add everything in the CMDB, add, I don't know, 50 attributes per CI type. The thing is, I'm not going to do the math here, but I provided you with some examples here saying, okay, you've got a CI in your CMDB. Let's call it, okay, you are going to run quarterly audits. So, and each asset, just to review the setting, review the attributes, will take you 5 minutes. So 4 times a year, it will be 20 minutes. Let's say, okay, 1 time per year, at least you will review them in more detail. It will be 15 minutes. So, and there are several more activities that you might do per CI. I'm not saying it's a must and you are going to review all the assets in your CMDB, but on the right table, you can see that a kind of rough estimation saying, okay, if you've got, based on these numbers on the left, if you've got 1,000 CIs in your CMDB and that CMDB contains very few kind of attributes per CI, I mentioned that something like 5 to 10, you can expect a quarter of a full-time employee per year just maintain the information here which you decided to put in your CMDB. But if, let's say, okay, you've got the 40,000 CI in your CMDB and the number of attributes is comprehensive, something like 50, 60 attributes per CI, this means that based on these kind of calculation, you may need 40 full-time employees to just maintain the information, running those simple things like auditing quarterly the CMDB, which is, I believe, none of your organization are afford the 40 full-time employee to just maintain the information in the CMDB. So you need to be sure that if you include something in your CMDB, you must audit it. Actually, if you don't audit, if you don't do these actions here, which it will end with the first slide. No one is going to trust your data because no one knows, okay, when this data has been updated or how accurate is the data. In most, sorry, I'll be quick. It will be just 2 slides left. Sorry to Chris. In most organizations, they are thinking that the discovery tools might be the answer. So we are not going to update the CMDB or the information manually. So we are going to set up a discovery tool, and we are expecting that discovery tool to scan the network and update our CMDB. For sure, it can be a help, but the thing is the asset discovery tools are not the answer because there are so many other information that the discovery tool cannot obtain from the network. For example, who is the owner of that device? What sort of role that we define for that a specific device on the network? By role, I mean in the service dependency model, for example, which part is happening on this device, which part is happening on the other device. So again, you need to maintain things manually. So and again, discovery is a good thing. It can be a help, but without having a proper manual intervention, it's not going to be a kind of acceptable CMDB in your organization, because on the other hand, it will create some noises which you don't want to. It will import some new assets which you may didn't want to import, or keep updating things which you cannot track later. It just went there, fetched the information from the network and put it in your CMDB. So, and let us slightly mention the frameworks, like the actual different versions of ITIL. From ages ago, we had processes around the CMDB. Historically, it was called Service Asset and Configuration Management, even in the ITIL version 3 and ITIL 2011. But since ITIL v4, it was kind of updated with a new perspective. it was saying, okay, in the past, you were expecting to have one single process to do two separate tasks at the same time, which was the asset management and the configuration management, which we already addressed as two separate perspectives. But in ITIL 4, the authors decided to create them and introduce them as two separate perspectives, as the IT asset management and service configuration management. And it is still the same in ITIL 5, which has been recently released. And it is somehow following what we already discussed and saying, okay, different perspectives. You cannot put kind of two kings in the single land. So you need to keep them separated from each other. These two are working together. You can treat them as a kind of siblings, not as a kind of synonyms to each other. Each of them needed to be handled and managed properly. So last slide. And just I mentioned ITL 5 to kind of saying, okay, nothing that much changed between ITIL 4 and ITIL 5, specifically, I mean, with these two practices, IT asset management and service configuration management. There are some new things in ITIL 5, like, I don't know, digital products and those kind of things that you might want to include in your scope of the CMDB, but around the practices themselves, not that much of a change. Okay, keep just these 5 points in mind. The first one is you need to clarify about the purpose of your CMDB, which of those 3 that we mentioned a couple of times: financial, asset and inventory, and the configuration. The thing is, each of those purposes are going to impact the rest of the things that you are doing, the attributes, the CI classes that you want to include in the scope. And the other important thing is this bullet. It is saying every CI class needs a consumer and a steward, or it shouldn't exist. So if you added something in your CMDB which does not have any consumer, or no one is going to maintain it, so why to bother to put it in your CMDB? Just get it out. Discovery is a feed, not a strategy. It might be a help, but it's not going to be an alternative to any sort of, for example, manual maintaining of your CMDB. And the last one, treat ID asset management and service configuration management as siblings, as I already mentioned, not the synonyms to each other. So I tried so hard to stay in my time, but I ran over a couple of minutes. So I will hand over to Chris, and he will show you.
Thanks, Babak.
Yep.
Thanks,
No worries.
Babak. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for wrapping up. Appreciate it. That does really give us a useful foundation for, excuse me, the practical part of the session. So I think the key point here is that the CMDB only becomes valuable when it supports real decisions and real operational processes, such as understanding impact, improving change assessment, supporting incident resolution, or giving teams a reliable view of services, assets, and relationships. Chris is now going to take us into MSM and show us how those ideas are supported in practice. Again, just before it starts, please drop any questions into the Q&A as we go. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for coming today, and thank you very much, Babak, for your contribution and for outlining at the beginning of this presentation the ways you can approach a CMDB. Can I just confirm, Andy, that you can see my screen?
Yes.
I can.
Brilliant.
We can.
Right, let's begin. Okay, so there are many features in MSM which you can use to support a CMDB, whichever particular flavor you're looking to build and for whatever purpose. So whether you're building assets or CIs, whether you're bringing those assets or CIs in through discovery integration or just creating them manually, whether you're maintaining the information for those assets within the CMDB and MSM as the source of truth, or synchronizing that with a third-party data source, whether you're just bulk uploading into MSM. There are lots of features that you can use in MSM to achieve the aim that you're trying to do. And I'm going to take you through a whistle-stop tour of a number of them and then dive out to MSM and show you how they can be configured. So first, but perhaps most importantly, the CI structure. MSM supports the creation of assets within two hierarchies of your choosing. So you can see in this diagram here, we have on the right-hand side, we have the CI base types. These are natively installed with MSM. They underline the CI types, some of which are also installed with MSM, but you can create additional ones. And then underneath those, you can create CI subtypes, which can go down any number of levels. There's always a sweet spot when it comes to the number of levels that you have. But you can see, for example, in this diagram here, we have a hierarchy which goes down from the base type of hardware, starting at the type of end user computing, which then splits off into classic subtypes such as laptop, desktop, and mobile. Now, this categorization is obviously very important when it comes to actually understanding what is in your CMDB. When you go down to the subtypes, as I mentioned, you can create as many as is necessary. And what you can do actually from the subtypes page is define the mandatory property fields for the types. So in this screenshot here, the hardware type mandates that you provide assignee, contact, make, and model for assets. Now, if I go out to MSM here, this is the CI type page. You can see we have hardware, which is natively provided and therefore unalterable. But then, for example, we have this infrastructure CI type, which has been created with the base type of hardware. That's obviously what it is. It must be said that any CI type you create can actually have defaults behind it. These are default values which are placed into any new asset you might create manually in the system. So please do remember that, because it can save a whole lot of time filling out data such as status, owner, and location if you're not filling that out using the templated methods I'm about to show. Subtypes are created underneath the types. You can see on the left-hand side here, we have a list of types. If I expand hardware, I have a number of subtypes underneath. This is my demo system, so you might see a blend of different examples. As previously mentioned, you can click on the type from any of these subtypes here, and you can actually mandate that certain fields are necessary when creating any particular asset of that type. So here I would be saying that contacts are necessary. We'll see that pop up later on. Now, if I just return to my slideshow, makes and models can be stored in MSM. These are obviously crucial to understanding, again, what's in the system. This is obviously useful for both assets as well as configuration management, finance as well. So some of these do blend over. You can see on the left-hand side here, it's very easy to create makes such as HP, Dell, Apple, whatever it might be. And then underneath those to easily input the models for whatever type of asset you might be having, a laptop, a server, a desktop, whatever it might be. These will be utilized either manually or through the integrations when importing assets into your system. You'll note here I've stored some basic details against these models, but there are more functional and convenient places to store these details, as you will see. I will also just mention that configuration item statuses can be stored in your CMDB. These are very important because they can be amended at any point. They can also be amended through the synchronization with your third-party asset register. That may run, for example, daily and amend the values accordingly. Of course, the administrators of this system reserve the right to change to whichever status is necessary to correctly identify the asset And you will notice on the left-hand side there that I've selected the disposed asset in this example, but I've also triggered some reporting flags for disposed and locked statuses. These are just additional reporting options that you can have in order to correctly search for and report on your assets. So if I were to just return out to MSM here and just show you, this is the make page. You can see the make page here for HP. Goes off into the models. This is the model button, which will load the following page, which contains all of the models. And you can see I've already prepared a HP laptop example, which we're going to take through the rest of this demonstration. But adding additional models is very easy. It's simply a case of adding it like this, whatever the model might be, and then it's into the system and it can be utilized manually or through the integrations. If you are modifying any of the statuses for any of your assets, and I'll just pop out to this list of Omnibooks here, which I have for HP, I can simply access the asset page for any one of these, and you can see that the status is currently in stock, and amending this manually is as simple as just taking it and amending it accordingly, whatever the value that might be necessary. Just click apply and there we go, and then the reporting will instantly change to convey that. So let me just return up here to the models. Let's move on and talk about the locations. Now, locations, you might be very familiar with them with regards to the organizational structure. Organizational units and people can also belong in locations. These are an addition to the address information that you might have against a particular person. We also have the ability for you to clearly denote that there are, for example, buildings at a particular location, different buildings, and they have a different number of floors, and you identify the rooms. In this example, obviously, I'm taking the stock room example at the head office for floor 1 of the county council, and this can be utilized when you're creating and maintaining assets to track where that asset might be. Obviously, static assets, it's much more simpler, of course, with static assets, like in the server room or when they're in the stock room, to do just this. The ability to modify the location can be found, as you saw in the previous example here, just down below. So at the moment, this asset is in the stock room. I can manually change that. If it were to change, it utilizes the locations. These location hierarchies can be created manually. They can also be created automatically through your discovery configuration import. If you do also change the listed contact for an asset, you can choose to update the location with the location of that contact. And that's the same applies for various other individuals that are nominated along the way. So creating a new status, by the way, is as simple as creating a new option here. And the locations are hierarchical. So if you do choose to create them manually, it's simply a case of identifying which location you want to create the asset in. And there we go, that's been created. Moving forward to configuration item attributes. This is key to what Babak was mentioning earlier on. You can create any number of configured CI attributes in your system to store any range of data in a wide variety of ways. If you've created asset attributes for request properties before, person properties, organizational unit properties, then you'll be very familiar with the interface here on the left-hand side. Here, you simply decide at what level in your CI hierarchies, aforementioned, that you want the asset, the attribute to belong, and then you give it a name, and then you add the values and the data type. So this is an operating system drop-down, which I've created, and you can see the drop-down values here range from kind of generic values like Android with no version numbers to actual Windows 11 Home precise options. Over here on the right hand side, you can see the values for operating system alongside standard values like RAM and hard drive capacity have been collated together in a hardware grouping. The hardware grouping is just denoted over here on the left hand side where it says group. You can see when you create the asset, you can put them into these collapsible groups. Working with these attributes, again, is really simple. Here's the operating system attribute, and it's as easy in this case of just adding a new value there and clicking apply, and that goes into the system, and it can be used when creating assets or changing the information on an asset. Next up, I want to talk about baseline configurations. These essentially are asset templates or CI templates, whatever purpose you're using it for. It's a templated set of information. So that is why the screenshot on the right-hand side looks like a standard asset. It's meant to. These allow you to manually create assets from these templates, or much more usefully, utilize them with the discovery configuration import to bring in assets with the right number of data fields to support the reporting and the purposes that you need them for. So as you can see, we have the HP Omnibook 7 here, and I'm bringing it in with all the templated data you can see there on the details tab, as well as templated data on the other tabs, such as attributes, where we just saw the 5 values that were being brought through. If I show you the baseline configuration data here is this information. You will note that, as I mentioned, there is additional information stored across here, like make and model, which is obviously crucial when you're creating a baseline CI. Additional information on these assets can also be templated, such as the special instructions. You will see later on when I add a request to add an asset related to a request, that the special instructions pop up on the agent screen. And they can be very useful. In this case, I'm linking out to full specification documentation at the HP website itself. And the attribute data is stored here. Adding additional discovery configurations is very simple. You simply come in here and you put in the information that you want, in this case, a flip laptop, and I can just define whatever information there might be for this, and it will be ready for use. Again, I can come out here and the options will be available for me. There we go, Omnibook flip. There we go. And the baseline's created. There we go. It is that simple. Obviously, additional information you can add as you go through. Now, the discovery configuration interface in MSM is really one of the most important areas. It's where all of this comes together: attributes, templates, types, subtypes, you name it. It all comes through here. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to establish connections to databases, external databases, whether it's through SQL or Azure. There's various connection types available. But as you can see in this screenshot here on the left, we have the Omnibook 7 HP discovery configuration here. It's leveraging the baseline CI of HP Omnibook 7 AI. That's the template that we just saw. And then the discovery configuration utilizes a discovery XML, which is the mapping file for what we see down the bottom, which is those property fields which are not being provided by the template, but are that information which is in the third-party database. You can decide to point to certain fields and then map those through to CI fields in MSM. So this is where you not only create the assets with that information for the first time, but you can update them thereafter every time this synchronization occurs, which doesn't just have to be daily. It can be every 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever you wish. There is a staging element to this, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I want to just not reiterate, but point out that with every unique asset that comes in with a unique asset number, you can actually connect a request template to that. And what that does is it will generate a request in the system and relate that asset for a particular task. So the classic example is that when you bring in an asset which requires some configuration by the service desk initially, you can automatically generate task requests or service requests which are assigned with the unique asset to a particular individual for them to perform the task. It might be preparation of the operating system, configuration of the apps on the laptop, whatever it might be. Going down here, you can see each one of these discovery configurations is enabled. So you can imagine you have multiple discovery configurations for particular Android phones, for particular iPhones in your estate, whatever the asset might be. And these are then set up. Once enabled, the system will, according to its system setting configuration, it will bring these assets in the first instance and then update them thereafter with the information that's in there. That actually leads us on to the discussion of the CI staging table, or as it's called in MSM, commit discovery data. You can have three choices here. You can choose to just bring asset information directly in without taking it to the staging table. You might do that with highly trusted data. You can choose to only bring new CIs to the staging table, and thereafter, once the asset's been created, that information, those information data points will update without going to the staging table. Or you can choose full staging every time for a particular integration, and that will mean that every line of data will always go to the staging table and will need to be persisted through. If I come out to the staging table here, I think I might have gone past it, so let's just load it manually there. The staging table you can see has taken through HP OmniBook 7 integrations. If I come out here to the penultimate page, you can see we have these unique numbers here. So if I were to tick these lines, each one is a particular line of data which I'm going to persist through for an asset. This asset via MSL006 does not exist yet, but as I persist this through to the system, there we go, MSL006 now exists. And look at all that data which is coming through from the discovery, from the baseline CI. I just persisted 5 or 6 lines through, but all of this data is coming through now, including special instructions and a variety of configuration data, which is already provided. Asset data, MSM allows you to loan out asset data. So you can see here, this particular asset had a loan start and end date, and the return date in this instance was not met. So this would constitute a late loan. The ability to actually loan out assets is supplemented by the ability to report on assets which have been loaned. It's very simple to do this in the system. If I just find the tab in question, just move that out of the way. Fantastic. Find the tab in question. These are the laptops. There we go. There's the loans for these laptops. So you can see one of these laptops is still actually not loaned yet, but amending those details is very simple. You simply come into the asset in question, go to the loan which is currently taking place, and you can come say that that loan will occurred actually today, this morning, and there we go. And then the information will be updated in the reporting to reflect that. There we go, that value has been put through. To supplement what Babak was saying earlier, assets can be audited. So you can add assets to audits. These group audits can be done, and you can batch results through with regards to these audits. So if I go out to my system, you can see, come out here to audit configuration items. This is an audit of the HP OmniBook. So adding additional OmniBooks to this existing audit is as simple as just searching for them here. Oh, wrong one. There we go. And just adding the one which I want to the audit, and then putting through the audit details. You can, if you have multiple rows, you can do this manually, and it will be really easy to do. These buttons allow you to persist the information through manually. So the audit dates, oh, I forgot to push that through. There we go. Where these audits can be closed once they're done, but you can also actually amend audit information from the asset itself. So I can see I'm running low on time here, so I'm just quickly going to whiz through these slides without popping out to the tool. The finance records can be stored in the system, and this is where you can store a wide range of financial information against each asset. Again, you can do this in bulk. You can see we've got values here such as initial value, initial cost, and then crucially down here, warranty expiry dates. If you have these data, a finance record, and you're within a warranty expiry date for an asset, and also if that asset has a valid underpinning contract in the system, so it's connected to an underpinning contract for that asset, what you'll see in MSM are assets which are listed as under finance, under warranty, and under maintenance. Now, any one of those might be listed as not under finance, warranty, or maintenance if those elements are absent. Just quickly going through, there is the ability to do dependency mapping in MSM. This is a very interesting feature because it allows you to say which services depend on which assets. This is crucial because this is configuration management, which allows agents to correctly monitor the impact analysis of certain assets going down. So in this example here, I have the MA1404 finance server, and this has certain services which depend on this. And if I just very quickly go to MSM and load a blank incident and put in that said asset number as the customer, you will notice that the contact of that asset is inputted, the asset is related, and then I am invited to log sub-requests as incidents for the services which depend on this asset to function. That is one of the real benefits of having good configuration management accuracy in your data. The relationship analyzer allows you to map these in MSM, and you're able to store licensing information in MSM and report on which assets have which licenses in the system. Again, another very useful feature alongside, in my final slide, the bulk update capability for MSM. Assets can be bulk updated like you may do with requests, and all manner of values can be amended to conform to new accurate information. With that said, I'll just move on to the Q&A. I apologize, there's still got about 5 minutes left for this, and I'll pass it back to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Edmonton Christopher Hall has placed a couple of interesting questions in the Q&A. Thank you, Chris. So he says, when assets are retired, how long should they remain in the database? He's working with the local record retention team and looking for some guidelines. So thanks for that, Chris. I think that is a fairly common scenario and a good question. And without wishing to sort of avoid that, I think the right answer will usually depend on your organisation's own sort of retention policy and audit requirements and any regulatory obligations that records retention team needs to adhere to. I think it is true to say that a common approach within MSM is to move retired assets into a defined status and keep them in MSM for an agreed retention period, rather than leaving them mixed in, as it were, with active assets. Fritz, I don't know if you want to talk about that in a technical way that could be accommodated.
Yes, so the status labels denoting retirement can be amended manually or automatically according to your system. The asset will remain in the database forevermore. You can choose to delete assets to the recycle bin if you wish. That may be useful for you, but there are various filtering methods available if you do not wish to actually see retired assets when you're performing your maintenance functions. So you do not need to delete assets, but retiring them is a very useful way of signaling that they're no longer part of the CMDB, certainly if they don't have any monetary value anymore and you're making financial calculations with regards to them.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And Edmonton, Chris, please let us know if there's any follow-up. And Chris asked a second question, which is, what version did the loan feature arrive as a test of your guys' product memory?
The loan feature has been around for many years. You should find it in your version.
Excellent. Once again, Chris in Edmonton, let us know if there's any follow-up to that. And then, Chris, I had a question that was common from, Chris or Babak, I had a question that was common from a couple of customers in the run-up to this. I committed to asking on their behalf, which, again, I think is a very common scenario, which is the CMDB has grown organically over several years. isn't necessarily a trusted source of data, where would you recommend starting the cleanup? Existing CI classes, a review of attributes, or a wholesale sort of define the decisions that we want the CMDB to support?
I think this goes back to what Babak was saying right at the beginning, which was what are you looking to achieve? What is the lens?
Yeah, you need to clarify that one first, because even let's say, okay, you are going to get rid of whatever you have at the moment, you are going to throw away and you want to start from scratch. But the thing is, actually, you need to answer that question first to be able to create a new one properly. So you can use the same path in the other way that you said, okay, you want to get rid of something. And when you answer that question, you might find something that you can easily get rid of. For example, if you just want to focus on the configuration part, then there is no need to have laptops, monitors. I've seen customers who also store things like keyboard, mouse, and those kind of things in their CMDB. So if you answer that question properly, then you can start cleaning up your CMDB properly.
Thanks, Babak. And we have a question in the chat from Kayoni, and the question is, how do we prevent duplicates resulting from auto discovery?
By defining, Chris, if you want to answer, you are on mute, but I can answer. You can define some sort of unique key, and it's your choice, because when you are configuring the asset discovery in Marval, you can pick a unique key. It can be the IP address, it can be a serial number, or because you do a kind of mapping with the third-party system and the Marval, you need to pick some sort of unique key. And in the next coming synchronization, the Marval will understand that this is the same system which we already imported. And if something has been changed, just do the update instead of creating a new one.
Super. I'm just checking to see if we had any further questions. No, that looks good. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. So with that, I'll say thanks very much to Chris and Babak. And thank you everyone for joining today. Hopefully you found the session interesting, useful, and it's given you some practical ways to think about CMDB. From a Marval perspective, the opportunity is to start pragmatically, identify the decisions you need to support, decide which CI classes genuinely matter, agree who owns them, and then use MSM to connect that data into processes where it becomes really useful. If today has prompted questions about your own CMDB approach, asset data, discovery, integrations, service mapping, any of the things that we really only had time to sort of touch the surface on, then please do get in touch and we can schedule a more focused follow-up touch point. And finally, if you're not already on Connect, please scan the QR code and join the Marval customer community. We use Connect to share updates, webinar content, details of future sessions. So please join us there if you're not already on. And with that, I'll thank you again for your time and say enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.